Hello and welcome. Today we're going to have a little talk about mental health awareness. Not just mental health awareness among teenagers. And to do that, we have a teenager in the studio, 𝗙𝗢𝗟𝗟𝗢𝗪. Welcome. You're from the Colombo International School, and we are actually meeting after some trying times.
Yeah.
Yes. I want to be as sensitive as much as possible. This must be a very difficult topic for you to broach. 3 of your colleagues have taken their own lives across 2 separate incidents. One 3 months ago at the Altair's, and the latest at the Lotus Tower only last week. And all 3 students were your classmates. So as I said, it must be a very trying time for you. I want you to take your time and sort of process this. You recently organized a walk to sort of raise mental health awareness. I want to get to that. But before we get to that, tell us something. When the first incident happened 3 months ago, and this recent incident happened last week, how did the student body react? How did they process it? What were their feelings?
So I think basically towards the start, no one could have expected this. So I think everyone was in a lot of shock because all 3 of them were completely fine, and no one could have even the last one was even more shocking. But I think we did know that she was going through some things because she did reach out and we were trying to give help, but she was doing amazing because she started making progress and recovering. But no one could have expected this, and I think most students, because when you walk into classrooms, there could be 3 students just crying, everyone's put their heads down, lessons aren't taking place. So I think it was a lot for everyone to take in, and yeah, mostly it was a lot of shock, and I don't think many people know what to do in instances like this, because it's not something we faced before, especially as teenagers. Losing a friend is not something you would want to process or even think about growing up. So I think everyone was kind of helpless, and I think we needed a way to find closure, and I think that's where I thought the vigil would come in place.
The walk?
Yes.
So was that your reaction in the sense is that your attempt to find closure?
So basically,
make sense of it all.
So basically, I saw a lot of students crying in classes and everyone their heads down, and they were trying to process this, and I thought school wasn't taking we had 2 tables put up for them where we could leave flowers and but I don't think that was enough, because even the first incident there wasn't much done. So that's when, as students, we decided that we should do something, because those were our friends that had taken their own lives, and we might not know the reason, but it might not have been it couldn't have been for no reason. So to honor them is what we thought the vigil would come in place. So me and another friend, I was at his house, and we decided that we should do something, as we couldn't let the last tragedy go down just like the last 2 did, because nothing happened the first time, because just lessons went back to normal, everyone was going to school as usual, and it was that those 2 students who took their lives just never existed. We had 2 minutes of silence, that was it. So I think this vigil came in place because we thought it shouldn't be something violent. We didn't want something violent, because most people labeled it as a protest, which was quite the opposite of what it was. So there were 2 reasons for this, because we wanted to raise awareness and tell people that we have numbers, we are there for you, you can always reach out. And the second reason was to honor our friends that have lost their lives, and to give a lot of closure to the students who were close to them. So that's when we decided to All of this took place between 3 days. We planned it on, I think, a Tuesday, and I think Fridays when the vigil took place. So we sent out a lot of posts, and we got a good amount of numbers to representatives from different schools, and we all met up at Independence Square at 6 o'clock, and it was quite surprising because I didn't expect that many people show up, which I was really proud to see a lot of numbers show up. And we all wrote notes on our t-shirts saying, for example, about how mental health matters and rest in peace to those who have lost their lives. And we began to walk from Independence Square. And I could see a lot of cars just going by the road, just looking at us, just like turning down the window and to see what's happening. And I think that was what we wanted. That was the first sign saying, okay, we have showed the people what we wanted. And another thing that happened was, I think there were some medias came to cover it, which was totally unexpected because we did not expect media to come and cover it. So when that came to, I think that was our way of spreading awareness and letting people know that we are there. And as we got into school, I think school also supported it because I think they understood that the students really needed this. And another very touching moment for me was when I walked in and I shook the principal's hand and I looked, and all the CI students were just lined up, piled in the basketball court. And this wasn't even like planned. Every single student in uniform was just waiting for us. And as the line walked through, they gave space and we all walked to the basketball court and we released 100 balloons in their honor. And as we walked towards the courtyard to leave them flowers, I think those two touching moments gave a lot of people closure, and to show them that that we are there, and even though something has happened, we have each other. Because when someone did cry in that moment, I saw a friend go and hug them, or like someone reaching out. So I think that's what we need to put out here.
Now, I picked up something here. You feel quite strongly about the reaction from the side of the school after the first incident took place 3 months ago, or lack thereof. Elaborate on that a bit. I mean, in the sense, like, how did they? I mean, you're clearly saying they did not do enough. What would you have done differently? What would you have preferred to have done differently?
I think what we did as students, I think the school should have organized something, at least something small, maybe left them something, or organized something small like what we did, a small walk. Not just, I don't think those 2 minutes of silence was enough to give a lot of people closure.
Were there any, let's just say, professional interventions after the first incident, or even after the second incident last week, in terms of mental health, or to sort of check up on the student body, how they're doing?
I think not really, but I did know that the last person who did take their life had reached out to school, and she was getting some help.
From the school? From the
school, as she was, we had a counselor, not exactly a counselor, but someone who is a professional in like talking to students. So I think she had reached out and written a letter to school, and she was actually doing well because apparently they had changed her whole timetable according to how she wanted, and feedback from school was that she was doing well and she was recovering. So this last bit where even she took her life was quite like unexpected.
You were expecting things to be on the mend, right? Were there any appearances from government entities, especially after the second incident, given the fact that by then 3 students have already left this world?
I don't think they came there to help. I think it was more of like an investigation against the school to see what was happening. But I don't think they took action to maybe check up on the students or give them a professional help, maybe a psychologist who could talk to the students. But I don't think the government did that.
You said it was almost like an investigation against the school. I mean, where do you stand as a student, as a friend of the Parish students? Where do you stand on that, in the sense like, school being investigated instead of help being offered? Where do you stand on that?
I think the government should have, before investigating the school and finding fault, I think they should reach out to the students and see if they're doing okay, because clearly it's a lot to take in as a teenager. And I know that even as we speak, there are hundreds of students, children, teenagers who are contemplating taking their own lives. Because right now I think in society there's a lot of pressure, and especially I think in our batch where O-levels are coming up very recently, and I think some people take it well, as like everyone has different personalities and different mechanisms of coping. And I feel like in Sri Lanka the issue is, I think mental illness is kind of looked down upon, whereas I'm saying they don't believe in such a thing. So I think most of the people who do attempt to reach out are shut down, whereas they cage those feelings, and finally when it snaps is when such tragedies take place.
When you say they're not taken seriously, are you talking in general, or this is specific to teenagers? What's your impression?
This I know it is popular among teenagers, but this could be the case in maybe people from their early 20s to 30s as well. But I think mostly in teenagers, because you're still not an adult, so you can't take your own action. So I think as a teenager, if it gets to a point where it's really bad, you have to reach out to maybe a parent or a teacher. But if they aren't supportive, I think you're left in a helpless state where you don't know what to do, because it's impossible for you to take action by yourself.
You spoke of pressures, certain pressures. The pressures or the challenges I faced as a teenager are very different to that of the modern day teenagers' challenges and pressures. So what are those pressures, and I mean, how do those things make you feel? What are the impact of those things?
For me, for example, at a very young age, you are asked, what do you want to be when you grow up, right? And me being like, I think I could have been 10. I didn't even know A-levels existed then. So I think that perspective where you are expected to become successful in life, and I'm not saying that should be the case, and I know people who ask you these questions, parents especially, they want you to do well, but I feel like some people take it in the wrong way, whereas they are constantly pressuring themselves, and that pressures them to kind of create this mentality where if I don't succeed, then what happens is what. So, and when they realize that they aren't going where all the pressure is a bit too much for them to take, in the sense where maybe if they aren't doing well in school, or maybe if some issues happen at home, I feel like they feel fully cornered, as pressure is already pushing up against them. And this final strand is all they needed to finally snap.
Now, you must have spoken this as sort of like in classes amongst the students, with friends and things like that. In those chats, the relationships they have with their parents, how supportive the parents are, how pivotal role the parents play in such scenarios, was it ever broached?
So it all I think it starts from the parents. Everyone has different personalities, I said this before, and it's all on the way you grow up. Because I think some people have really close connections to their parents, in the sense they grow up beside them and they're always there for each other. And they have more of like a sibling bond. Whereas, so I could easily reach out to my dad if I was going through something. But I feel like sometimes when there is distance between the parents and the child is when you kind of fear to reach out, and the fear of being shut down is sometimes seems more scarier than like actually taking your own life. Whereas you just want all the pressure, everything to just stop, and that's the only solution you see. And I feel like that's a very dark place to be in, because it's not. I know it's not a nice place to be in, because so for example, me speaking from my perspective. So, like everyone, I had my own things too, but I had my own coping mechanisms. Whereas I'm a very active person. Whereas I like to play sports or hit the gym, which is what I like to do. So whenever I felt down, I'll be like, okay, I'm going to gym now, and I would constantly keep myself occupied, where I don't give myself time to think, and that's how I coped with all my problems.
But would you prefer to have had somebody to talk to?
I did talk to people because that helped too, and not professionally. Because me personally,
no, not professionally,
yeah,
but someone close to, someone you're close to.
So for me, I think someone who relates or has gone through the issue is easy to talk to. Someone close to my age. So I did reach out, and it helped me a lot. But I think this isn't the case with everyone, because even though everyone has one nose and two eyes, we don't look the same. And the same thing goes to as everyone has different views on life and different personalities. So some people like reading, for some people shutting down does help. And I have a few friends who have gone through stuff, and when they did take some time, alone time for themselves, they figure out who they are. But I think sometimes it is good to reach out, and that's what I'm trying to send out, and that we are here for each other. We should be there for each other, and you shouldn't be afraid to reach out. And also what I'm trying to say is to maybe parents or societies to take mental illness as a rapidly rising issue in Sri Lanka. Because I've noticed in developed countries, right, they have counselors for every single school.
Student counselors, yes.
And you see the most suicides happen in middle income countries or developing countries such as Thailand. And so I think this is because due to lack of professional help. Because in Sri Lanka, for example, there are a lot of psychiatrists. Psychiatrists is people who diagnose you and give you medication. But we have a lack of psychologists. Psychologists are the people who speak to you and help you through your issue and help you with your progress. And so I think that is where the country stands comes into place, because I think Sri Lanka should work on getting more psychologists in schools maybe, so students can easily reach out, and even maybe parents and teachers could be more open. And I'm not telling students to criticize teachers or parents for every small issue. I'm saying don't be afraid to reach out to them. And I'm also asking parents and teachers to be more open and maybe take some time to listen to what they have to say, because you could have just saved a life.
You spoke about the importance of having someone to talk to, but do you feel like among boys and girls of your age there is this sort of apprehension towards actually going to somebody else with their issues, especially when it's mental health concerned?
I feel like I said before, reaching out is the main issue here. So I think if we start there, we can help a lot of people. But that starts, so when you're in a certain state of maybe depression, no one can actually help you. The truth is that like no one can actually help you. But it all depends on if you want to help yourself, because if you have completely given up, there is no crawling back out of that ditch. But if you think, okay, I'm going to put my hands out and ask for help, that's when you can actually climb out. And so what I'm trying to say is the first step to us teenagers getting out of such issues is we should start reaching out. And we shouldn't be afraid of reaching out, as I feel like some people feel like it's something to be ashamed of. But I think the real issue is the shame you have after all the struggles you've put all your friends or family through after taking your life, because you've solved all your problems, but think about the problems you've caused now. All these people used to care about you, but you just didn't see that.
We see quite often adults talking to psychiatrists or parents talking to psychiatrists, and them having little discussions about teen mental health. How do you see this? How do you view this? I mean, like, the teenagers are not part of this conversation very often, right? But to see that sort of discussion happening and not being involved in that discussion, how do you interpret this? How do you unpack that?
It depends on both aspects. As like, I'm sure adults face different issues teenagers face as you're in different stages in life. So I think when it comes to teenage mental health, I think it should be teenagers that are there.
Even in those discussions, televised discussions.
Because like I'm giving my perspective as a teenager. I don't think you would get the exact same perspective from an adult. Whereas my perspective about an adult could be different to whereas you relate to how you see life. As I think that clash is where issues start to break out.
You want more teenage perspective to be brought out into the discussion and be involved in the decision-making process.
Yeah.
𝗙𝗪𝗓𝗦𝗧, it's been an absolute pleasure.
It's been
Thanks for
my
coming
pleasure.
on.